How to stay positive in tough times. Now, when you're going through something tough externally, it can be very difficult to manage your emotions, and this is very reasonable because as outside things are happening, it has a direct effect on how you are feeling. Now, the first thing to understand is that it is very normal to feel these things. A lot of time when you go online and you look for people who talk about positivity, and even in the spiritual industry, in the self-help industry, being positive is put on the forefront where you must be positive no matter what is happening around you. But many times I see people becoming more agitated with themselves, more angry, just because they feel like they're not in alignment with being positive. When we add on a feeling to an already uncomfortable situation when we're going through something tough, this makes us feel even worse. So when we're going through something particularly hard in our life, if we don't have enough money to pay our bills, if we went through a hard breakup, something like this, it could be any situation. If we are thinking about being positive too much and we're putting the emphasis on being positive, what can happen is if we're not being positive, we just get so disappointed in ourselves. And now we're not going to get what we want, and now we're not being positive, and we just go in this vicious circle that we're not good enough, now we're not being positive. So this is generally what happens when we enter this cycle into always trying to be positive all the time. Rather than trying to be positive all the time, it's very important to just let your emotions pass, because your emotions are very appropriate at any given time, especially when you're going through something quite difficult. It is largely a matter of perspective, because we often label how we feel, and if we're overly caught up on what we're feeling all the time, then we don't allow the emotions to just play out naturally on their own. Now, if we're very used to thinking negative all the time when we go through hard things, it's probably because you are putting some sort of extra emotion on top of the already difficult situation. So many times I emphasize being very gentle with yourself. And the reason I always overemphasize this is because when we're going through something difficult outside of us, we're already going through something bad. It can make us feel guilty. It can make us feel angry. It can make us feel uncomfortable, insecure, and unsafe. When we add on to ourselves more guilt, more insecurity, more anger, we're adding on to the already uncomfortable situation. So in order to reverse this and to start thinking positive about what is happening around you, you would have to be very gentle with yourself. And being gentle just means to remove yourself punishing yourself. We might feel and say, this is impossible, I don't know what to do, I can't continue further, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, why did I let this happen? This wouldn't have happened if I would have done this. And many times it just goes down this hole where you're just blaming yourself for everything. And then this will continue to make you feel bad, being in that downward spiral of negative thinking and self-blame. In order to think positive, first be gentle on yourself. Take the blame away from yourself, because many times things that happen outside of us are out of our control. But the one thing you can always control is your own beliefs, thoughts, and the way that you manage your emotions and your feelings. Another reason you want to be very gentle with yourself is because we usually go off of subconscious patterns in the way that we react to the things happening around us. So because things are happening on autopilot, you can say that you have no control over your initial reaction. So since your reaction is happening without your consent, it's just happening to you, you should not be angry at yourself for something that's happening automatically. So it's important to take a step back and breathe and reshift your mind in a way where you can think rather than just react to the things happening around you. Because many times you are just on autopilot, just reacting to everything the same way you always have in the past. And this is all you have to go on. If you feel as though your problem is way too big for you to feel good, then do not try to feel good. What you first must do is acknowledge what is happening. If you're having financial troubles, for example, this is something that is considered to be a huge problem. It can be a huge obstacle in your way of accomplishing the things that you want to do in your life. It can be considered a big mountain where you don't know how to get through it. It's just in your way, and there's no way to go around it and no way to go over it. Now, what you must do is acknowledge the situation you are in. And instead of saying that it's impossible, this mountain of a problem is impossible to overcome, and I don't know what to do, and I can't accomplish anything, it's important to understand and say, well, this problem is big. but I will do something to overcome it. And then this will give your brain something to work on. Your mind can be in a state of peace once you change the words you tell yourself. But many times we're overwhelmed by the mountains of problems that are in front of us or that can be around us. So as we perceive these big problems, it can seem like everything is impossible. And so we're always adding on to what is happening around us. We give everything an interpretation, and this contributes to us thinking in negative ways. We can have an initial reaction to things, and this is normal. When we don't have enough money to pay our bills, when we go through a breakup, when we go through anything, we have an initial reaction and we may feel bad, and that is okay because we are constantly reacting to what happens around us. Now, after this initial reaction, we can actually change the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that we interact with ourselves. We generally see life in two ways, positive and negative. Now, when we look at things this way, it's very binary. We only look at things one way or another. When things happen around us, it's either positive or negative, and depending on that thing, that is how we are going to feel. So if something positive happens, we're going to feel better about ourselves. Now, if something negative happens, then we're going to feel bad. But rather than do this, we can actually learn to just see things happening around us without having to label them. And as we do this, it becomes a lot easier. So we can become our own comforter. It's sort of like comforting a child. So now when you're going through financial troubles with a child, for example, they can be stressed out because they see you worrying about money. Now, children can believe anything. Now, with a child, you wouldn't want to stress them out further and say, well, listen, we're in an impossible situation and we're going to lose everything. You wouldn't discourage a child in this way. You would say something else. You would say something like, well, we're going through financial hardship. However, we're going to get through this and everything will be okay. This is something you would generally say to a child. And then a child can be comforted just by hearing this. The same way we must be comforting ourselves in the same manner, almost like children, where we must talk to ourselves in that way where we can put our mind at ease instead of it going down this hole where we cannot escape. So what always happens is we always add on to an uncomfortable situation. Uncomfortable situations are already uncomfortable. So let us not add on to that by taking our inner world, our thoughts, our emotions into it as well. Because we can always control our inner world the way that we feel, no matter what is happening around us. And it takes some practice. So when you stop beating yourself up over what's happening around you, this is already a good step in the right direction in thinking positive, because you don't want to get overly upset with thinking the way that you do. You want to move fast as quickly as possible. Your mind can always handle negativity in small amounts. And just because you experience negativity in your life doesn't mean that it's anything bad, even though that's what it can feel like. We feel like sometimes we have to always be positive and always think in a way and be a certain way. But it's not like that at all. We have highs and we have lows, and we have everything in between as well. But it's about finding balance between all of these emotions that we feel as human beings, because we're going to feel all of these. No one in the world can ever escape any negative situation happening to them. It's all about how we manage them. So stop beating yourself up, be very gentle with yourself, and then move forward from there. And that by itself is a big deal for your mind. Your mind can easily grasp this, and it kind of gives your mind permission to ease up. Now, to accept something is difficult doesn't mean that you're not being positive, because it just means that something is hard and something is stopping you from trying to be positive. And that in itself is not a negative thing. It just means that you are accepting what is happening. You're not putting a label on it. You're not saying that this is going to determine what I'm going to do, how I think, and how I act. It's just happening and it's making me feel this way. And once you do this, it becomes a lot easier. We all go through difficult situations. It's all about how we manage them. And every difficult situation is subjective. So we all go through these experiences differently. But it's a matter of how we can manage what is going on. So think of being positive as just being in a mental state where you are at peace. You're not overly thinking about what is happening. You're just doing what you can. And this is what thinking positive means in hard situations. You cannot jump for joy all the time when everything around you is going terrible. And if you can do that, then that is great. But it is very difficult to do this. In order to take small steps into being very positive, just recognize that it's not about being ecstatic in very difficult situations. It's about getting through them by being at peace, just having a mind that is very steady. It's about having a mind that can push through even in the middle of all of the fear and all of the worry. Because even with fear, you can take steps to move forward. And this is what bravery is. This is what courage is. The ability to keep walking while you're afraid of what is going to happen. And you can do this. But sometimes fear can keep us paralyzed. It can keep us in the dark. It can keep us worried. And it can keep us in shame and resentment. But if we continue walking, this is what being positive is, and this is what we are supposed to do in these situations. Continue looking forward and not looking directly at the problem, but looking at how you can get through the problem and having the problem move for you. It's normal for the problem to get in the way sometimes, but continue walking and you'll find a way through it. And this is what being positive really means.